Questions log. Week 26. 6 months. 6 months since I shined my light through the window of a woman who looked all too familiar. I'm with her now, soaring impossibly in the arms of gods to teach her the last of what I know. To pass on what was passed to me. I've seen her mind. I've seen her courage. And still, I have the same question. Is she ready? Perhaps we never are. This is 52 Pickup.
Hello once again, gentle listeners. I'm so happy to be here. Welcome to another episode of 52 Pickup, a podcast about the best comic you have never heard of. I am Gita. I'm just Gita, that's who I am. And I'm joined as ever by my co-host, Alex Jaffe, professional comic books expert.
That's me, Alex Jaffe, now, always, and forever. That is my guarantee.
So Jaffe, I wanted to ask you a question. Yeah, I said I heard someone else had asked you.
Yeah?
Is it pronounced Raahs al Ghul or Raysh al Ghul?
It's funny you should ask, Gita. This is a question I've gotten a lot since I've opened my doors to be the professional DC Comics guy. Because, in Batman Begins, it's pronounced one way. In Batman the Animated Series, it's pronounced another way. And this is a character who is meant to be of an vaguely Middle Eastern origin created by a couple white guys. So that's always going to be a bit of a hazy area to draw from.
And at a time when Middle Eastern bad guys, swarthy villains, one might say, were just a more common trope and not considered as racist as we now know that trope is.
As you've pointed out yourself, he was a villain created in the 70s, and he wasn't portrayed by an actual Arab man until Arrow in the 2010s.
Which is so funny. It's like, that's the show that got it right?
Yeah. There's some good stuff in Arrow. They do some
Arrow
cool
has some
things with the
bangers.
Lazarus Pit lore that I'm really into.
Yeah, no, I think a perfect adaptation of the source material for the CW.
All right. In the very first appearances of this character, back in Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil's heyday of kind of fleshing out who Batman was in the Bronze Age, which is roughly defined as the period between 1970 and 1985. That's when this guy first started showing up. And in the lettering, it was always spelled with a long bar over the first A and a long bar over the U. So a pronunciation guide for from the very beginning, he was like, people are not going to know how to pronounce this. But the long bar was meant to indicate that it was pronounced race or maybe Raysh, as in snake, because that's how linguistics works. But we're told time and again that Raysh al Ghul literally translates to head of the demon. That's what he was going for. But if you ask any Arabic speaker, they'll tell you that the word for head is pronounced Raahs, with an sound like father. But Denny kept insisting up until his final years that he spoke to Arabic linguistic professors, and they told him the long A was correct. So he stuck with that. I think what's going on here is that Denny got a little confused because there's an Arabic word Raahs, which means a leader or a chief, which is kind of a metaphorical head, whereas the word for a literal head is a Raahs.
Oh, that's an interesting linguistic, knot to untangle. That's really interesting.
So we have different sources in Raahs or Raysh al Ghul's background, whether the head of the demon is an actual literal thing or a figurative thing. Depending on how you interpret it, both are correct. So you don't really have to fight about it. Whether you say Raahs or Raysh, you're right.
See, for me, my takeaway from this is that I think it's better to honor the pulp origins of that character archetype rather than the specific not necessarily informed take of its creator. Does that make sense to you? Do I need to clarify?
I would appreciate a little clarification.
So it's kind of like there's this tendency, I think, in modern popular culture to want to take stuff that's fundamentally unfixable because it comes from a very racist era and trying to like wokeify it. And the thing about Raahs Al Ghul, he's just like an evil racist stereotype of an Arab man.
Yeah.
Like he's just that. So why don't, instead of like trying to make it perfectly accurate to any like Arabic, why don't we just say this is an imperfect creation and let's honor the place that it comes from, which is also imperfect. It's like what happened in Iron Man 3 with their Fu Manchu, the Manchurian character.
The Mandarin?
The Mandarin. Right? I'm sorry. I almost said the Manchurian, and that's not even right. That's the Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah. Great movie.
You can't fix the Mandarin. You cannot. There is no way to make that both honor the origins of the character and also honor Chinese people who are real and like do it with respect to Chinese culture. There's just no way. So at the very least, let's look at the culture that produced this character and like how we got there, which is why I feel like Raahs Al Ghul is always how I've heard it, because I've heard it pronounced through like animated series, like all of these things that want to honor pulp fiction and the kinds of the places where those kinds of racist archetypes come from. Like noir, etc. It's all very racist. Like they often have depictions of people who are not white, which is cool, but also that is because they are dealing with criminal underworlds. And when they're they're all of this fiction is written by white people who don't actually know very much about the criminal underworlds of non-white people. So if it's the head, like the head of a organization or the head, like the literal head, a body part, I think what matters most is thinking about what's coolest in a pulp fiction sense. Yeah. And to me, that is the head of a demon, meaning literally he is the head part of a big demon.
Yeah, which is something that Denny O'Neil got into in the excellent Birth of the Demon graphic novel with incredible art by Norm Brayfogle, maybe the best of his career. I would rank this as one of my all-time favorite Batman stories, where Denny really gets into the background of Raysh Al Ghul, as he pronounced it. And there's this very dramatic scene where he literally removes the head of this demon idol. And he's like, I'm your god now. Just like, okay.
Well, okay. Denny, you sort of get it. You sort of got it. Rest in peace. Yeah. One of the goats, but he was born in 1939. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. He did really, really good considering.
He was trying so hard. Harder than a lot of comic book artists were. And I just, again, an unparalleled, like, just understander of the dramatic arc of what noir is and what those kinds of stories are. But those stories are very much built out of a fear of the other. And that's also what makes Raahs Al Ghul a scary guy, is this idea that somewhere in the sands of Arabia, there's this evil man who can come back from the dead. You know, it's like, it is very much a boogeyman for white America.
Which actually ties quite nicely into this issue, where...
Yeah, it does, weirdly.
2006, we're still seeing a little bit of that residual casual racism that just would not fly today.
Yeah. I mean, the cover, we'll talk about it, but the cover absolutely, it sells this as like, we put a button on it by talking about Raahs Al Ghul, but we'll get there. We gotta talk talent. And we are at issue, this is issue 26, week 26?
Week 26 of 52 for you math heads out there. This is exactly 50% of the way through the series.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I can't believe we've done it. We did it.
I can't believe you've done this.
It's my favorite Vine of all time. It's so funny.
It's the reason Vine exists.
Absolutely. Blue Sky just added video, and they added you can only do up to 30 seconds or something. I wish it was shorter. 6 seconds is that's the exact amount of time you need for a setup and a punchline, and it's perfect. It teaches everybody how to edit. I love it. Anyway, we have, I think, a few messages that are extremely special to talk about this halfway point that we are in. And Jaffe, why don't you set this up for us? I'm really excited about this.
Sure. We're in the middle of planning a big celebration to talk about how far we've come in these past 6 months worth of content. And I reached out to a couple of the creators we've spoken to in the past who gave us some special exclusive 52 pickup commentary for this issue. First, a message from Mark Wade, a good friend of mine who schooled me on the origins of Lana Lang.
So funny to just be witness.
God, I'm still living in embarrassment, but you know, if you got to be second to anybody, it might as well be the guy who wrote Kingdom
Wade.
Come.
Absolutely.
Mark Wade says, congratulations on reaching the halfway point. This is about the point at which the team was finally confident that we could pull this whole thing off, even though secretly we were still looking for a significance to the title 52, other than it's a year of DCU events conceit. The bulk of this one was Jeff's work. He handled most of the Black Adam stuff, as I recall, and reading back over it now, it's still pretty shocking. Also, Pat Olive was and is a terrific storyteller. So I think kind of between the lines here, Mark Wade is like, if you have any issues with this is Jeff Johns.
Directed to someone else. If you have been listening to our bonus episodes, which you should subscribe to Aftermath, aftermath.site/plattix. Had to get the plug in there.
Oh yeah.
You'll know that every single writer of 52 that we've talked to so far has a different origin story for 52.
I know, it's so good.
It's so funny. So this message in particular from Mark Wade is very funny to me.
Yeah. Between our recent recordings, I recently binged every episode of Interview with the Vampire.
Oh my God, yes. I haven't seen those final two because I know what's going to happen and I don't want to cry.
But there's this theme throughout the series about the unreliability of memory, where Louis keeps telling his version of the events, and Daniel Malloy, the Anthony Bourdain looking ass reporter, keeps uncovering holes in his stories like, hey, that's actually not how it happened. And I think everybody who was involved in this series was hypnotized by a vampire at some point.
Yeah, no, it's so
Probably
true.
Grant Morrison.
What do you think would happen if Grant Morrison met Lestat? I would either be instant fight to the death or like a game recognized game moment where they're just like, oh, is this Scotsman? He has very nice, how you say, hashish? I like it. Louis will join us next week. Yes.
Yeah, I think they'd get along. I think they'd be friends.
Yeah, I think so. I think Grant would know just to start talking about metaphysical shit. And Lestat would immediately be like, oh, yes, c'est métaphysique.
Oh, man. He like does his thing where he slows time and Morrison's like, hey, what's up?
He's just on so much ayahuasca that he just could absolutely keep up with that. Is something that we're supposed to be crazy? Is something crazy going on here? Or
yeah,
I can do that shit too.
Yeah, that's supposed to do something.
That was a pretty good approximation of what I imagine Grant Morrison sounds like. Oh God. So Greg Rucka also has a note for us about some stuff that we'll go over in the issue itself. But take it away.
Here's a message from my good friend Greg Rucka, who says,
Rucka the GOAT.
Okay, so I actually pulled the issue, and it's funny because there's stuff I absolutely do not remember writing after all of these years. But that said, I remember writing, of all things, the Jack Ryder "You Are Wrong" section. And in particular, being very pleased with myself about and where's the Martian Manhunter? Everyone knows you can't have a Justice League without a Manhunter from Mars bit, which was a fun callback to a thing we did a couple weeks ago with the Airsats Justice League. It amused me, at least. I'm not certain if it was Jeff, Mark, or Grant who wrote the dinner scene. According to Mark, it was Jeff. But some very subtle foreshadowing there at the end, which I don't think I ever fully appreciated until now. I will say, I cringe as "don't speak camel jockey." Whichever of us thought that was appropriate, even if it was meant to indicate that the speaker was a raging bigot, I'd like to think we wouldn't write that now.
You know, that did stick out to me when I was reading this issue this week, because it is so... To me, what it was, it gave me like a sense memory flashback to exactly how racist our culture was at that time.
Right.
People were saying that anti-Arab slur constantly. I heard it on like the radio, when we still had morning shows, when radio, when DJs weren't just people that pre-recorded all of their bits and then the programming was done by a robot. I heard that stuff like post 9/11 all of the time. Even up until the 2010s when I was in college, I had a friend who was a New Yorker who like objected to, for no reason at all that she could explain to me, a mosque being built within like a couple of square blocks of the Twin Towers. And I was like, it's a mosque. It's just a mosque. And she said, if you were a New Yorker, you'd understand. And I was like, no, I think it's just racist.
Right. Yeah, I was baffled by that.
Yeah, that was a huge controversy.
And I know.
It was in my little college bubble where we were not really watching the news because we were studying all the time, it penetrated. Like that was the level of anti-Arab racism that was just normalized. And unfortunately, I feel like our culture is heading in that direction again due to some current events that you may have been aware for the past calendar year that stressed both of us out so much.
Oh boy, I'm about to go home for the high holidays. I'm not looking forward to it.
Yeah, me and David are looking over different High Holy Days tickets and just like it's just a crapshoot because even the most like liberal synagogue, you just don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And what kind of stuff they're gonna say.
Right. I'm going to be where for the anniversary of October 7th?
The way we were like packing to leave to Los Angeles to get married. And I wake up one day and David's pacing around the house and already on his phone. I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
It was rough. It was sad. But you see reflected in culture, unfortunately, like just a lot of racist backlash on not just Palestinians, but Arab people of all kinds. And this language, like that's how bad it can get, where someone who is like as empathetic and liberal as Greg Rucka can end up writing something because he's just trying to reflect what culture is like.
Right.
And the language is just so racist.
I will say, as I usually do when we get into like Arab caricatures within this series, Jeff Johns is a Lebanese American. He passes as white, but he's Lebanese. And a big part of his motivation for having this big Black Adam story was having more interesting, nuanced, and positive representations of Arabs in comics. And if Mark is saying that it was Jeff who wrote this scene, it's entirely possible that what Jeff was trying to do was reflect on the racism that white Americans had towards his people at the time.
I mean, it's certainly true to life. I don't think anyone could say that this was not how we were talking about Arab peoples at that time. We were, and it was mainstream.
Yeah.
9/11 was crazy.
9/11 did things to us, man.
It really did. It broke people's brains. God, as always.
Tom King's still writing about it.
Oh my God. Tom King has a lot of shit to work out about 9/11. Just read Strange Adventure from the first issue. It's just like, I got some shit going on about 9/11.
His Jenny Spark series right now is literally about how the dead spirit of the 20th century had to come back to life after 9/11 happened.
Oh, I mean, that's so true.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's 100% true. Oh, wow. That's
like we
so
lost
accurate.
out on our future. We're just stuck now.
It's just, all I'm going to say is not all of us became CIA assets after 9/11.
Exactly. You didn't have to do that, Tom.
You just didn't have to do that. That's all. Tom, you're a great writer.
Nobody was forcing you.
But nobody made you do that.
As Mark notes, the artists this issue are Pat Olive and Drew Garassi, who previously gave us the History Repeats issue, that great panel where Skeets recognizes himself as a football trophy. Same artists here. We also have a new colorist this issue, Pete Pantazis, who got his start coloring for Image and Wildstorm in the 90s. He colored the first Harley Quinn ongoing series in the 2000s, and after this he would go on to join the Countdown team in Final Crisis.
Well, the colors on Final Crisis are really fantastic.
Yeah!
So, the Final Crisis doesn't necessarily make sense if you just read the event, all 8 issues, but I will say the art bangs. The art bangs hard, especially anytime Darkseid shows up. They got something, there's some magic in there.
Final Crisis is a comic that assumes you have been reading Grant Morrison comics for 12.
Yeah, it's a project that Grant Morrison was working on since DC 1 Million.
Exactly.
And it assumes that you know that. I did read DC 1 Million, so to me it was very satisfying.
Right.
For others, I do not know. I do not know if you liked it as much as I did.
I can tell you I didn't. Not a fan. But this isn't a Final Crisis show. Maybe it could be someday, but not today. Today it's about the halfway point of 52, The Beast Who Came to Dinner. Let's talk about this great cover.
Oh my God. So this cover does take it back to Pulp Fiction in a very literal way. It has shades of some of the interior stuff that Morrison would do in their run on Batman, where he's introducing the hand, and he has that incredible page layout that I think was J.G. Jones also, where each one of the fingers is a panel, and there's a big 2-page splash. It just looks so good. But here it's rendered as like a classic, like drive-in, campy B-movie poster.
Yeah. I absolutely love this shit. This is fantastic.
Add that to the pile of I would buy a full-size poster print of this.
Yeah. It's so good the way it casts Beauty of Savannah as like the classic silver screen horror girl.
Mm-hmm.
We've got these like sci-fi diodes in the corner. It's the font, just down to the font choices and the fake like rated V for violence against humanity warning. It's so good.
It's great. It makes me really happy.
Just this book really does its job in standing out on the comic book shelves every week.
Absolutely.
And because it's called 52, you got to imagine that a lot of these comic stores arrange their comic racks alphabetically. This is always going to be the book on the very top left of the display. Like the first thing you look at if you are like analyzing the new releases from left to right is going to be this 52 cover, whether it's just a layout of DC books or all the mainstream releases that week altogether. It's always going to stand out. It's going to be the thing that first gets your impression, and it never wastes it.
That's absolutely true. It is, I think, a testament to how it thinks of itself as television. It uses literally all of the space in the comic to advertise the concept of what this comic is.
Yeah.
At the very end, you get a next episode on, and then the cover is like those little commercials you get for the next episode of television between episodes, week to week. That's what it feels like to me, where it knows that it has to continue to entice you, even though it's got its hooks in you.
Mm-hmm.
We've been watching From, the inexplicably named television show From, which is just like Lost if like a family of 4 landed on the island in the middle of everything going on.
Okay.
It also even has Harold Perrineau in it, and he's just killing it. It feels like a rerun on a lot of the stuff that like on the exact way that Harold Perrineau got fucked over and Lost. And it just made me think of like that, like how TV used to be structured, what it felt like to watch something week to week, and how you needed to be constantly reminded of the things that happened last week, and what to look forward to also.
I mean, the problem with Harold Perrineau on Lost was that they saddled him to a child actor on a show that took place in real time, despite years of filming elapsing between seasons.
And that, and also just like all of the stuff they implied about that child, either the show would have to get rid of him or reorient everything else that's happening to be about that child. And they didn't want to do that.
So my favorite thing about Lost is that like 15-minute episode they made after the show that just like explains all the plot threads they left dangling.
Yeah, and it was basically like, all those guys we didn't mention, they're doing great.
Yeah.
I love that. It's very funny.
Just resolving everything after the fact. It's something that 52 does itself, which we will get into after week 50, I think.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Something we're going to have to maybe dedicate like a whole special to. We'll figure it out when we get there.
Honestly, when we see how this halfway point episode works out, we'll see how many episodes we need to do once we actually wrap things up and what we need to go over.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because part of the reason why I want to do like a halfway point episode is like, let's just sit down and talk about all of the things that have occurred and like where they cross over. Let's map this out and just talk about it.
Yeah, we haven't talked about this much, but there is a 4-issue miniseries in between week 50 and week 51 where they just go, oh shit, we forgot to wrap up all the 1 year later stuff.
Yeah, we'll get there. It is very, very, very funny.
Yeah.
And I love thinking about how the sausage got made here because it's such an unusual project. But it is just like you can watch writers in real time be like, oh, fuck. Oh, shit.
No. Like,
exactly.
seeing them like spinning plates wobbling.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, as a creative person, as someone with a creative job, I'm sure you've fucking been there where you're just
yes.
oh my God, it's about to collapse.
Just put on top of that, it's a weekly series with all of these creators with different ideas of what they want to do from the editors. It's a miracle this even happened.
And it's a double miracle. It's like a literal double rainbow that it's as good as it is. But
right.
Let's get into this issue, which I think is a really great season ender, right?
Yes.
For the first season.
A great mid-season break.
Yes, exactly. Right before we hit Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
You know? It really is right before we hit Thanksgiving. They just did Halloween.
Literally, yes. You nailed it. There's a scene here that feels like it could have been a Thanksgiving dinner, but they're like, let's put it a little earlier.
Yeah. All right.
We start with everybody's favorite storyline, the Charlie and Renee story. Charlie's hugging on to Blackad's back for dear life while Isis is carrying Renee up through the mountains as Renee Montoya gives her little noir-inspired monologue about how far she's come, kind of reflecting on this the same way we are.
She's just a down-on-her-luck city kid who never thought she'd see places like the Himalayas or wherever they are. That's the Himalayas, I'm assuming.
Some indistinct mountain range. We don't know yet.
And the face of her experiencing happiness, that illustration in the bottom right-hand corner.
Yeah.
That's maybe the only time she's done anything approaching a smile in this entire series.
It's the first time she's allowed herself to express joy.
Yeah. She's flying. She hasn't done that before, I don't believe.
No, I don't think so.
So she's only ever worked with superheroes that don't have like metaphysical powers. So here she is actually experiencing what other characters that fall into heroism in the DC universe get to experience, other than alcoholism and unending misery.
Yeah, she makes a reference to the Keystone City story arc from Gotham Central. Like, that's the farthest she's been from Gotham before. There's a fun Congo Bill reference, which was an old, speaking of old racist tropes, this was an old feature in like early Golden Age action comics about this white explorer going through deepest Africa who eventually got the power to transform into a gorilla.
They wanted to do Tarzan. They couldn't do Tarzan.
Exactly.
I love it. Oh my God. Go ahead. Let's keep going. Congo Bill. When those two words came out in that order, I knew it was going to be rough.
Yeah. Now he's Kongorilla, a guy who's just stuck in the body of a gorilla.
That's a better idea.
He's best friends with Starman. It's nice.
That is nice. Okay, that's nice. I think I do love that the preponderance of gorilla-related comics for marketing reasons has led to an unusual amount of gorilla characters. So an unusual amount of humans who have gorilla best friends.
Right.
That kind of rules.
It's great. It's kind of great. We're just stuck with Detective Chimp now. Why not?
Why the fuck not? It does kind of rule, though.
Yeah. Here we get that. It is the Himalayas, 57 kilometers east of Nanda Parbat, which is the home of Dead Man's patron, Ramakrishna, kind of the height of like metaphysical death and rebirth in the cosmology of the DC universe. Something you might know from TV's Arrow as the home of Raahs al Ghul or Raysh al Ghul, whichever you prefer. But that's where our Black Marvel family drops Vic and Renee off. And they're like, are you sure you want to be here, of all places? And Vic's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. And Black Adam thanks him for all he's done. Isis and I both owe you a great deal. And we get our title drop, Halfway House, because we are halfway there.
Yeah. In the next page, Vic gets a little kiss on the cheek from Isis and has no reaction at all.
Yeah.
I think is really cute. It's like, yeah, Vic would just stand there blankly. Like, that's what he would do. He, in fact, just looks at her skeptically. He's like, why are you doing this? It's a neurodivergent person reaction to being touched at all. That's weird.
Yeah. Why are you kissing me in front of jealous Superman? You're actively endangering my life right now, lady.
It's like, please don't.
Yeah.
But then what Isis gives Renee Montoya is a rose, and she is greeted by someone also giving her a riddle about that rose off screen, asking her maybe you're making more references to Renee asking questions about herself and discovering who she is.
Literally how Vic introduced himself to Renee at the start of the series, asking who she is. And she's still getting the same questions halfway through.
She's saying, the hell if I know. And she still is like in this intermediate part of her journey through heroism in this story. This is exactly the halfway point of Renee's emotional journey in 52. Yeah.
And who should come into this scene? Why are we here in the Himalayas? We're joining up with a bunch of knuckleheads who, the first time I read 52 back in 2006, I had no idea who these people were. But now whenever I revisit it, I freak out because these are my old friends now. I know them the same way Vic does. These are Richard Dragon and Tot Roeder, Vic's two mentors, the guy who developed the pseudoderm mask and the guy who taught him to be a great martial artist. Richard Dragon was the protagonist of Denny O'Neil's very first series for DC, Richard Dragon Kung Fu Fighter. Now, that's not true. That wasn't his first series, but it was a very early series.
Richard Dragon Kung Fu Fighter. That feels very Kung Fu the television series inspired.
It absolutely was, yeah.
Yeah, just has to be.
It was very much him doing the David Carradine thing. It's the series that gave us Bronze Tiger. It's the series that gave us Lady Shiva.
Okay.
It's where Denny O'Neil started doing like an unexamined, hey, these racist tropes are pretty fun and I'm into them. And then spend the rest of his career kind of fleshing those out and trying to retroactively
retroactively apologize, make them real characters and not just tropes. Yeah.
Exactly. There's a world of difference between Ra's al Ghul as he appears in the 70s and Ra's al Ghul as he appears in Denny's 90s comics. And you see that with characters like Lady Shiva.
Or even like modern interpretations of Ra's al Ghul that cast him as sort of like an anti-imperialist era person that has actual material complaints about the Western world and Western hegemony and like the United States military-industrial complex. Some of that makes its way into the Batman Begins movie, but of course, in that movie, Ra's al Ghul is a white man, so it kind of mutes it. Doesn't really work anymore.
Liam Neeson. But yeah, here we see Vic taking Renee back to the very beginning of his own journey, introducing her to his mentors so that they can teach her. To what end? I'm sure you can figure it out if you think about it for 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm. It's there's some unsubtle foreshadowing here about what happens to Renee and who she's going to become. But if you don't know, the journey is so fun. So I won't. I'll just say wink.
Yeah, most people reading 52 in real time have figured it out by now. Mm-hmm. But what is fun is seeing her get closer and closer to it, how that is going to be realized.
She's clueless. She has no sense of self even at this point because her self-esteem is in the toilet.
Yes.
So especially after the recent events that she's been through, having to kill a child, et cetera, she is someone that is not able to go on the metaphysical journey that she needs to without some additional help. So Vic found the people that helped him.
Yes. Yeah. Which is exactly what he did with Huntress in Greg Rucka's Cry for Blood series that he co-wrote.
But she has interiority, and her entire interiority is murder.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I know who I am, buddy. I don't need you to redefine me.
Absolutely. Yeah. But from here we go into day 2 and into, again, speaking of, do you have something you want to drop before day 2?
No, I have something I want to drop on day 2. I love this transition.
It's so good. It really, really is. So we open the first panel on this 9-panel grid is a title card for what appears to be a Bill O'Reilly-esque like Fox News screaming news channel. Again, something we used to have a lot of all of the time in 2006. to the point that famously Jon Stewart went on one of those point counterpoint shows and just sat there morosely and was like, why are you guys hurting America? But this is how we used to deliver news. It's like part of what made Fox News extremely like popular in the ratings. They'd have somebody get like just a talking head who is like loud and angry and often extremely racist and like reactionary, and just let them talk for a long time, literally pointing at the camera and being like, everyone's wrong about everything except for me. So the name of the show is called You're Wrong. You are wrong.
And what I love about this is the last sequence is all about Renee Montoya trying to figure out who she is. And the very next day is like, whatever you think, you are wrong.
A fun little writer joke. I do like that. I do like that a lot.
It's also a great kind of creator in joke. The kind of founding father of the 9-panel grid is Steve Ditko. Who did it in Spider-Man. He did it in the original Question stories. And when Steve Ditko came over to DC, one of the first characters he created for them was the Creeper, whose alternate identity was Jack Ryder, who was this kind of news pundit who, much like Vic Sage, took on an alternate identity to fight crime. But the difference is that Jack Ryder has become a much more prominent character in DC than his superhero alter ego. I think that's the only character that might be true about, that like the civilian identity of this guy is more famous than the superhero he was created for. And DC always loves using him in this Bill O'Reilly style reactionary role, which is a great niche. If you need someone to be critical of the hero's point of view in like a way you need to prop up a straw man for, Jack Ryder's your guy.
Yeah, you know, my personal like character idea for someone to represent the reactionary undercurrent of America is like a new interpretation of Livewire, where instead of being a shock jock, she's like a Red Scare style podcaster.
Yeah, that's so good.
Right, I think that there needs to be in this universe somebody, a character like Jack Ryder, because there are legitimate left-wing critiques of superhero universes, and then there's also reactionary critiques, and they both, in order for this universe to feel real, there needs to be both of those at the same time. And if you only have one, it will just feel fake. Like, it will feel artificially, like, it'll feel like an artificial conflict. But here, when there's like two sides of what is wrong with superheroism, which is what this whole part of the comic is about, you begin to feel like, okay, there's a broad spectrum of political opinions in this universe. And here's one part of that line, and here's another part of that line, which gives a more realistic texture to just the people that you don't see, like the regular chums that are just hanging out in this world, that don't have superpowers, and live at the whims of people that do.
But he's kind of using the disaster we saw a couple weeks ago where an ersatz Justice League showed up and just appeared to make a huge fucking mess of it. Like, well, what are we even doing here? What's Lex Luthor's whole role in this? What can we trust these superheroes to fill in the gaps that Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman have left behind? Where even are they? Where's the Martian Manhunter? I'm here to ask questions. I'm not here to provide solutions. I'm just here to get you real mad. Here's John Henry Irons.
To me, there's no way this is not inspired by that Jon Stewart moment on Point Counterpoint, right? Like, it's okay. So that was like a real like turning point in my personal politics, where he went on television to be like, this content itself is part of what is wrong with our political climate right now. It's so polarized and so reactionary, and you are encouraging people to fight with each other. This scene is just a demonstration of that. You don't have the Jon Stewart-esque figure to go in and be like, shut up, guys. But you do have, and like, I'm not a huge Jon Stewart fan. He's a classic lib guy. But he's a comedian, right?
Yeah.
What does he know about anything? But here you get, again, a demonstration. He understands how television operates. Television operates on conflict. And here you get a classic setup, right? This is why people say, if you get an invitation to go on Fox News, just don't take it. You are being set up. They are setting you up, and that's what they do to John Henry Irons here, because they want to disprove him, but they can't actually disprove him with facts. They have to defeat him emotionally.
Yeah, debate me, bro.
It's a real debate lord thing. Like, this is why I hate debate streamers and I don't watch them. It's just, I don't want to get mad. I want to be informed.
Yeah.
I know how I feel about things, and I don't derive any enjoyment over watching someone say a bunch of hateful bullshit and watching them get owned or whatever. That's just not for me. But Jack Ryder would be a debate lord.
It's his entire thing. He is a debate lord, and he's here to spring a surprise guest on John Henry Irons, who is here to critique the whole Everyman Project. And Jack is saying, hey, it's time to democratize superpowers. Everyone should have access to them. And John's like, that's a terrible idea. And he's like, are you sure? Your niece doesn't seem to think so. And here she is.
You know, he makes some good, cogent points about being what it means to be a superhero. He talks about firefighters versus the Citizens Fire Brigade. The Citizens Fire Brigade is good, he says, but there is a huge difference between passing buckets of water down a line and being the person that enters a burning building to rescue other human beings. Those people have training and special skills and special equipment that allow them to do that safely. But then this all gets reduced down to, and you see in this panel on the lower right-hand side again, you see a split screen of Natasha looking calm while John Henry Irons looks extremely upset.
Yeah.
That's how this television show works.
And you've already lost.
Yeah, they made him upset, so he looks irrational, and Lex Luthor wins again.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have gone on Fox News.
Yeah. And
John Henry, where's your PR people?
John's like, I know for a fact that Luthor has the ability to take these powers away. Can you prove that? Well,
there you go.
Right? I have concepts of a plan.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he looks irrational. He looks crazy. They just get you on there and gaslight you and make you look like a dumbass. Like, that is, if you are a liberal person that is appearing on any of these conservative news channels or programs, that's what your role is, to look like a stooge. And that's what they do to him.
The last panel of this is just a close-up of John realizing how owned he's just been.
Yeah, he looks miserable.
He's like,
oh, God.
Oh, I see what just happened here.
Oh, fuck, I got
there will be no second debate.
Yeah, in the middle of the debate, also his niece makes like a huge splashy exit. She's like, I gotta go save some lives. And he just looks like a chump. He's sitting there silver in his stupid suit. He looks so dumb.
Oh, God. And that brings us to the centerpiece of this issue. The Beast Who Came to Dinner. We're here at Savannah Manor. A big crack of lightning peels over a spooky Gothic mansion going down some kind of electricity tube. We see family portraits of the Savannah family back in the Golden Age. Dr. Savannah had a family of his own at Fawcett Comics. He had 2 beautiful children and 2 ugly children. And the beautiful children were perfect and good, and the ugly ones followed in his father's footsteps and wanted to take over the world. And he had an ex-wife, Venus, and she is kind of the center point of this story here, which in the back matter for the collected edition, Jeff Johns is like, I really wanted to flesh out the Savannah family, and this was my opportunity to do that. So even he takes credit for writing this whole scene, which makes sense because he was doing all the Black Adam stuff up until now. We see maybe Venus's side of the family isn't as good as we've always seen them depicted. That maybe they're just maybe they're evil in their own way. Because Venus's first reaction to overhearing her ugly children working in the lab late one night is to say, those 2 butterfaces are at it again about her own children.
Oh my God. It's really funny. Like, the writing for these kids is also really funny. It's classic Revenge of the Nerds stuff, but they're doing really deadly experiments.
They're trying to create a time machine so they can go back and not pee their pants in first grade and get braces younger. It's very funny.
It's really, really silly stuff. It is what you would want if you're trying to flesh out this family. It's like, what kinds of petty evil deeds are evil children getting up to?
These are very much Savannah's children. It reminds me a lot of the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie. Did you see that movie?
No, but I've heard it's amazing. I really have to see it.
We find out that the whole reason Frieza wants to gather the Dragon Balls is to make himself 5 centimeters taller. Not so tall that people would notice he had work done, but tall enough that he would cut like a slightly more imposing figure.
That rules. Okay, I just finished my friend Tony's book. Tony Tula Mute. He wrote this book, Rejection, and you have to read it. It is so funny. It'll make you cringe until you die.
Put it on the list.
There's a story in the middle about a gay man that comes out later in life and he tries dating, but his first relationship is so embarrassing for him because he's got some really intense fetishes he doesn't feel confident talking to his partner about. So the last part of the story is him sending an email for a custom porn video, and it starts off with, I'm 7 feet tall, and I'm wearing the jacket that Vincent from Final Fantasy VII is wearing with the pauldrons that Auron wears in Final Fantasy X.
Oh my God.
It's
all
amazing.
Right. I'm setting up a new rule right now. I will take every one of your recommendations for every comic that you read on my recommendation. How about that?
That sounds actually really good because I need to read some more comics. And I've bought a lot of comics in your recommendation and I haven't read them.
Okay, I will figure out what I'm going to assign you in exchange for Rejection after this podcast. But right now we get a little reference to Suspendium, which has some Bronze Age roots in Shazam stuff. We get a cameo of Wave Rider, who says, "I know why," which seems to be a callback to Skeets' cryptic "he knows" from a few issues ago. And there's a big explosion in the time room as the kids get called up for dinner. But we were about to time travel, they whine to their mom. It's very good.
You know, if this was written now, she would be Kris Kardashian. She would be the Kardashian mom, the momager, because that's basically the role she's inhabiting here.
And as the kids go up to their dining room to join the rest of the family for dinner, we get one cryptic panel of some kind of reptilian monster they've left behind in the basement. Who could this be?
But who's ringing the doorbell? Let's just move on. Let's ignore that for a second. Who's ringing the doorbell here?
Black Adam.
It's Black Adam's family.
There. Yeah, it's Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson there for dinner. He's brought Isis with him. He's brought Osiris with him. We find out they're here because Venus Savannah made a $20 million donation to their children's hospital. And if you drop that cash, they are obligated to join you for Turkey. Pretty good deal, I'd say.
Honestly, fair enough. Fair enough. Again, another great example of how updating this would just make him into Kris Kardashian. That's a real Kardashian move.
And she drops a really actually legitimate concern on them. Like, hey, remember how at the beginning of this year, all of those mad scientists were disappearing? And because of everything that's been happening in the news, we've forgotten about it. I would like you to do something about that, please.
Yeah, they're maybe the only people she can really ask to do something about that.
Because she is a Savannah, she can't reach out to the superheroes.
Exactly. But she knows, not only does she have a personal goal, she knows it's probably bad if all of these people are disappearing, presumed dead. Like, that's probably a sign of some greater machinations going on, which we do get a little look at in the next page, where we flip to Oolong Island really quick.
We flip back to the most fun storyline in the entire series.
There's some great jokes in this bit. I really like it.
It just, once again, we see all of the greatest mad scientists of the DC universe ripped to the gills on the finest cocaine, drowning in maniacal inspiration, just creating doomsday devices to their heart's content and fighting each other. And suddenly the news breaks out that there's a girl on the island.
There's a girl. Different from the Bikini Babes.
Not a babe, a girl.
A girl, yes.
Yeah.
They talk about, like, the tone here of the dialogue is a bunch of 16-year-old boys.
Yeah.
You know, I love this bit in the corner here. Let me just get closer to see it because my eyes are so bad. Where he's like, I knew a girl once, Morrow. And Morrow goes, and? I just knew one once.
It's so good.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
That's some classic Morrison dunking on nerds. I really do like it when he gets a little bit mad about comic book culture and he just writes that into their books. But the point is, like, there's another mad scientist here, and she's a girl.
Yeah. This is a girl that Greg Rucka created for his Wonder Woman run, Veronica Cale. because he was like, I think Wonder Woman needs her own Lex Luthor. And that is the niche that she was created to fill. And here she is being drawn back into continuity again after the end of that run, where she is the only woman on the island. And after just doing a sort of that one Marissa Tomei monologue in My Cousin Vinny, where she proves she knows what she's talking about, everyone is just rushing to help her.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cute.
It is girl boss gaslight gatekeep a little bit.
Yeah. That's what she's there for.
Exactly. But after that scene, we go back to this beautiful turkey. There's 2 turkeys on this table.
A 2-turkey dinner, yeah.
It's a double turkey dinner. Honestly, I don't eat meat anymore, but turkey was always my least favorite of all the meats. It's dry. No one cooks it right. I'm sorry.
My favorite meal is a vacuum-sealed smoked turkey leg that you just cannot get in New York for some reason. So every time I go back to Florida, I just pack a briefcase full of them.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in the airport where there's drug-sniffing dogs? Do they linger on your turkey?
No, but they did open up a Jerry Garcia bobblehead I tried to get through security for my dad once because they assumed there were drugs in there.
That's very dumb. Don't smuggle drugs in your bobbleheads. Come on.
Yeah.
That's an insult to everyone that's smuggling drugs.
My dad was so pissed because I got it specifically for him. And he was like, "You've ruined the resale value. What could I do?"
What could you do?
It was the drug-sniffing dogs, man. It wasn't even a dog. It was a guy.
It was a drug-sniffing man.
It was a drug-sniffing man. Osiris is very pissed about this whole dinner. He thinks we're wasting our time here. And when we could, like, why are we out here having dinner with donors when we could be, like, doing superhero shit? And he's like, I want to meet some superheroes my own age. I'm tired of, like, hanging out with my Ursat's mom and dad here. I want to have my own friends. And he storms out. And that's when a giant crocodile man attacks the dinner.
Yeah, it's a great panel.
Yeah.
It really is.
I love this page.
This page is really, really fun. He's like wearing half a shirt and he just knocks the table in half.
Looking like the goddamn lizard from Spider-Man.
Absolutely. It's what people are thinking about when they think about, I can't say it's Killer Croc, but I always think about the joke in the online circles I ran in where they call him Crockamurderer. It's like, oh, he's a crocodile who kills people. What will we call him? Crockamurderer.
Yeah, it is very Killer Croc.
Yeah, but this character, as we'll know in coming weeks, is a little bit different from Killer Croc. He's just running a rampage, and then he runs through several walls.
He grabs one of the spare turkeys like a football and just runs out like a linebacker.
It's very funny. He Kool-Aid Mans through several walls. You can just see through all of them like it's a Looney Tune.
Right. Exactly like the Gossamer Looney Tunes episode.
Yes, exactly. So he runs out into the garden where Osiris has been moping, just real angsty. He's having some teen angst.
Getting to be a teen.
And this is where we learned that this little crocodile guy can talk. And
he's just a scared little guy.
He's just a scared little guy. He doesn't know why he has hands. He doesn't know why anything has happened to him. He's just hungry. He's
all
crying.
Alone in the world. He's been trapped in Savannah's basement. He's an experiment. He was just a simple crocodile. He didn't ask for any of this. And he's all alone in the world, and he's hungry, and he just wants a friend. And Osiris is like, well, I could be your friend. And that's how this Marvel family gets their own Talkie Tawny, baby.
Exactly. Yeah, it's complete now. The Black Adam family is complete now. They have a talking pet. It's wonderful.
Well, Captain Marvel back in the Golden Age had a talking pet tiger. Well, he wasn't his pet. He was his friend. And he was a bipedal tiger man. And wherever he went, people were just like, oh, okay, it's a tiger man. They didn't... They weren't freaked out by it. He was just kind of part of the world. And he was in that very first Captain Marvel collection I alluded to in the last episode that my dad got me as a kid. So Talkie Tawny was one of the first comic book characters I ever knew about. So it's very nice to see Jeff Johns adding that to this world. He's like, it's not really a Marvel family unless we have a Talkie Tawny. And here we are. Now Osiris finally has a best friend to call his own, and it's going to be happy days from here on in.
Yep, nothing bad will ever happen to these guys.
No.
Thumbs up!
Just a great positive note to end the week on.
It's very sweet. It is genuinely a real moment of kindness and empathy. And That's all I will say.
Yeah.
So what's the backup this week, my friend?
The backup this week is Mark Waid is given the impossible job of condensing the backstory of Hawkman and Hawkgirl into 2 pages. And he does a quite admirable job considering. This is infamously one of the hardest things in the history of comics to explain Hawkman. And it's something that nobody really ever got until quite recently, which is something I might talk about in a bit. But Mark Waid does a really admirable job of covering the basics of Hawkman being this ancient Egyptian prince and Hawkgirl being his lover, and then being getting in a fight with a wizard and getting reincarnated again and again through time, always destined to end up with each other. Just an epic love story across the ages, and what their current status is, where there was some kind of glitch in Hawkgirl's reincarnation process, which keeps them from being on the same page. For more about that particular incarnation of Hawkgirl, I would highly recommend a previous guest and friend of the show, Jadzia Axelrod's great Hawkgirl miniseries, which kind of explores what her deal is now that she's not part of the Hawkman family anymore. But right now, it's kind of this nebulous will they, won't they territory that Jeff Johns is kind of keeping them in the contemporaneous Hawkman series going on at the time. Art right now, by the way, is by Joe Bennett, who is our, I guess, main artist on this series. But also we've seen, we're not going to see him very much in the second half of the series. And Joe Bennett is here, I guess, because he was the artist on Jimmy Palmiotti's pretty good, but not great Hawkman run from like 2004, 2005. So he was, I guess, the Hawkman artist they had on hand. And, it's a really tough thing to explain because sometimes he's an alien, sometimes he's an Egyptian prince, sometimes he's an archaeologist. There's just like all this different shit going around. Sometimes there are multiple Hawkmen around at the same time.
Yeah. So many of the DC Crisis events are actually a way for editorial to wipe the slate clean on Hawkman and start again and try to do a different origin that makes more sense.
Take 27.
Yeah, and every time the Hawkman origin just becomes more complicated and actually more confusing, which is so funny to me.
With one exception, and maybe I'll talk about it in a little bit. But yeah, overall, considering everything that Mark Waid had to cover, this is a really admirable attempt to kind of give you everything you strictly need to know about Hawkman without getting into the details.
At the very least, there's this one really nice panel where it shows you what the different costumes they've worn throughout the years look like. So you get a baseline for like what level of died and reborn they're on right now. It's like it is the part of the reason the origin is so confusing, this origin says, is because they've died and reborn a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't explain Thanagar's.
It does not explain Thanagar. It doesn't explain a lot of things. But maybe I'll get to that in the Blackboard in a little bit. First, I want to ask you what your favorite scene in this issue.
I knew a girl once. It has to be that one.
It's so funny.
It's so funny that it's just whenever you need a little bit of comedy, let's just flash over to Oolong Island for a second. Those guys are weird, and we love how weird they are. It just made me laugh.
There's a reason that Keith Giffen decided to set his Doom Patrol run after this series was over on Oolong Island. There's just so much comedy potential there.
Absolutely.
My favorite now, anyway, is Vic basically introducing Renee to his parents, because it's a very sweet moment to me that just is a very important step in the whole journey of Vic from 1986 until now, which this whole thing is kind of a culmination of everything that Vic Sage has done in passing on the torch, as it were. And is like, well, this is the part we need to do now. And I feel a lot of big feelings because of it. Of course, the appearance of Sobek, who is the name of the crocodile man that Osiris will give him, is adorable.
His little crying face. I just want to give him a little kiss.
Jeff Johns' goal with this scene was to instantly make you fall in love with this character, and it worked so well. Everyone immediately became obsessed with Sobek on contact. This just like vulnerable crocodile man who's all alone in the world.
He's just hungry. Yeah. I love him. I really love him.
He's just hungry.
Oh, I'm just not talking anymore. What do you want to throw on the blackboard?
Let's talk about Hawkman.
Let's do it right now. I love hearing about Hawkman.
For most of my comic reading career, I could not give two shits about Hawkman.
Yeah, I think this is a very normal cycle, a Hawkman cycle, where you're just like, this doesn't make sense, and I'm gonna ignore it.
Hawkman for me was basically like the Legion of Superheroes. There was just so many different versions of it, and all of them seemed to bleed into each other, and like, I just did not want to bother. And like, oh, his big deal is that he's a hero who can fly. Who gives a fuck? Every hero can do that.
It's so real. It's like, oh, he's got wings? Fuck off.
Wow. He flies badly. That's his thing. He needs these huge, inconvenient fucking wings.
He flies in a way that makes him sleepy. I don't give a fuck.
But what solved it literally in one issue, just right away in 2018, was Robert Venditti's Hawkman series, where he was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to solve the Hawkman problem. And everyone's like, sure, Rob. Okay. Let's see if you can do what Jeff Johns couldn't do. Let's see if you can do what John Ostrander couldn't do.
Yeah, seriously.
And in literally one issue, he fucking does it. He unlocks all of it.
Tell me.
I'll tell you how. What we learn is that Hawkman doesn't just reincarnate through time. He reincarnates through space. So the Thanagar Hawkman, that's still him. Yep. The JSA Hawkman, still him.
Yep.
All of them are
that
like non-linear. It's like when he reincarnates, it's not right after when the last one died. It could be at any point in time.
Oh, that rocks, actually.
Yeah.
That's because it doesn't have to make sense. You're making it up. It doesn't have to be like normal reincarnation.
Exactly.
It can be the wizard's curse can be whatever you want it to be. And it can be you will never experience linear time ever again.
Right. And this incredible 29-issue series, maybe my favorite of that whole period of DC continuity from like the Rebirth era on, is just Hawkman trying to make up for this primordial sin in his first life, which doomed him to reincarnate until he could make up for everyone he was responsible for the deaths of in his first life. Wow. And a Hawk woman's role in all of this is that she's like this angel who convinces basically God to give him another chance. And he's like, fine, if you care so much, you can be in the cycle too. You're trapped in this with him. It's going to be your job. And they fall in love every time.
That's wonderful. I like that so much better than the actual origin point being like, it was ancient Egypt and they were already in love. Like, no, maybe it's like the nature of souls is more complicated than that.
It started millions of years ago.
Yeah.
And one of their first incarnations is on Egypt, but that's
only if you're counting like chronological time.
Exactly.
And not the time that godlike figures experience.
And it just gets into this whole thing with like evil incarnations of Hawkman, who's like, well, if we have to make up for all of our sins before we stop getting reincarnated, if I want to live forever, I got to kill more people.
Oh, that's really funny. That's really good.
Yeah.
It's like, if once you, one of the themes in Interview with a Vampire is that the idea that being alive forever is incredibly lonely, and loneliness is the undoing of a vampire. Like that is the thing that will kill you in the end. There's a great scene in the second season premiere where they do meet like an old world vampire, and after she gets confirmation that vampires will still exist beyond her, she just fucking kills herself.
Yeah, she throws herself in a goddamn fire. It's good.
An incredible scene, and you do like there is like that shows up in comics a lot too, where there are a lot of immortal beings, and people just get driven insane by the fact that they will always be alive, and I like that.
What's different about Hawkman and Hawkwoman is that they always have each other. They always find each other. Mm-hmm. And usually it's them finding each other, which triggers their memories of all their past lives.
That's such a fascinating conceit.
Yeah.
Like, imagine, like, Indie Sleaze Hawkman and Hawkgirl, where they're both in terrible bands, you know?
That's my trade. I will read Rejection. You got to read the Robert Venditti Hawkman.
Okay, I will. I absolutely will. I'm 100% will, because now you got me hooked.
Okay. What do you want to put on the blackboard?
We know that if Jack Ryder exists, then we know that there is a DC Universe equivalent of Fox News.
Oh, yeah.
What is the DC Universe equivalent of MSNBC?
Hmm.
Right? Like, because there's got to be, those two networks exist to feed off of each other, you know?
Yeah.
They are a symbiotic arrangement, essentially. So there's got to be like the lib-brained, everything superheroes do is good. And remember to stay in line if you're in line to vote network.
I think the Daily Planet is that.
Interesting. Do they have like TV punditry?
They did in the 90s.
That is true, right? Clark became a television reporter a broadcast reporter for a short period of time. Yeah.
When they were like, okay, this newspaper thing isn't going to fly.
Yeah. Now they're dealing with the death of the newspaper in a different way by just writing it into the comic. But yeah, that makes sense because Lois would absolutely go on counterpoint just to yell at somebody.
Yeah.
That's her fatal flaw is that she's very vain and also like thinks she's 100% right. She thinks tricks don't work on her is what she believes about herself. She's definitely one of those people that walks around saying advertising doesn't work on me and then buys things that are like virally advertised in her Instagram feed.
R.I.P. to them, but I'm different.
Yeah, exactly. She is like every annoying reporter stereotype you've ever heard of.
Which is why Superman has to save her from disaster every single month.
Exactly. He's always just pointing out the things that she buys off of Instagram are actually drop shipped from Alibaba.
All right. With that, I think it's time to go on to our listener mailbag segment, asking the questions. Our first question this week is from Michael, who says, I have to thank your show for not only helping me get back into comics in a way I haven't since high school, but also inspiring me to start writing a fan fiction again. Michael went on to tell me about his fan fiction, but I've edited it out because I feel like this is the kind of thing where if Michael listened to this 5 years from now, he'd be like, I can't believe I admitted to that on a podcast. So for your own protection, I am keeping the details of your fan fiction out of here. Just know, I think it's very cute.
No, I think it's good that you're writing fan fiction. Writing creatively for any reason is good. Like even if it's quote unquote bad, if you like doing it, do it.
Yeah. My question is, what's your favorite obscure character or team? Not a weird pick, but one that you don't think has gotten the love it deserves or a chance to shine with the right writer. Also, what writer would you give that character or team to? This is a question we get kind of a lot, but I like the idea of a team that's obscure. That's not something we've tackled too.
Let's build this together then, because I think that we could probably come up with a collection of characters that would make a fun, bounce off each other in a fun way.
Oh, that's not where I was going with it, but okay, let's do that.
That sounds fun. So my first pick for this draft would be Impulse.
Okay.
As Impulse. Maybe we can age him up a little bit, but he's still got to be like an ADHD, iPad kid from the South. Like that is the core of Impulse for me. Is like he has the energy of youth, and it doesn't make sense to make him an adult. That's why he always ends up being a Flash when you turn him into an adult. So that's my first pick.
Okay, I get next draft pick.
Yeah,
we want this to be a team of 6, maybe.
Let's do 6. Yeah,
let's do 6. All right, my next draft. We are going with a very wacky, high energy choice for number 1. We need a counterbalance for that. I am picking one of my favorite boys, Connor Hawke, the son of Green Arrow. Connor Hawke rules. He recently came out in the comics as asexual, which is just, it was so special for me.
That's so great. Oh my God. That makes sense to me. Also. Yeah. That scans for me.
His whole thing in Chuck Dixon's run on Green Arrow was that he was absolutely clueless whenever anyone was hitting on him. So there is that legacy.
Yeah.
But during the 2022 DC Pride special, they gave Connor Hawke to Ted and Rowe, this great artist team who are both asexual themselves, and they wrote the story where he comes out to his mom. And he fights the Music Meister. It's really nice.
That's really sweet. I love that.
Just like as someone who hasn't seen any representation of my sexuality in comics, it just meant a lot to me being a big Connor Hawke fan. And I think as a guy who's very serious about what he does and just very methodical and thoughtful, I think he would make a great foil to whatever zaniness we're unleashing on this team. So my vote is Connor Hawke.
Okay. I think that's a great addition as sort of someone who could fit into a leader archetype.
Yes.
Yeah. So my next one is also a character that already knows Impulse.
Yeah.
But one that was my favorite from Young Justice and had a disappointing conclusion, I think, to their character arc.
Yeah.
Secret. Do you remember Secret?
Yeah. I remember Secret. Greta.
Greta was the younger sister of a drug dealer, essentially. And she was young enough to really morally oppose just her older brother doing anything bad, to the point where she ends up, unfortunately, dying while he's committing crimes. But she comes back as a ghost. And this ghost is a secret. So she is like naive, and throughout her time as she develops her ghost powers, she has like a childlike crush on Raahs. She's sort of learning about the gray areas, as you do when you become an adult, like the difference between good and evil. You think of them as being two discrete things, but then you understand that there's a lot of shades of gray there. I also just really think that we've got one character who's a metahuman in a way where they just run really fast, and another character who's a weapons expert. This is like way more explicitly, like we're entering flying brick territory here, which rounds out some of the power stuff, where we've got someone who's not just loud and fast, but like can do something that's more subtle.
Yeah. Speaking of versatility, I think we've got our traditional metahuman. We've got our kind of supernatural element with Greta. I think we're missing an alien aspect. And to that, I'm going with one of my favorites. I'm putting Jaime Reyes on the team. We're going with Blue Beetle.
Yeah, I love Jaime so much.
Yeah.
Jaime just rocks. He's DC Spider-Man.
Yeah.
That's it. They figured out a way to make Spider-Man.
Jaime and Impulse are best friends in the Young Justice animated series. They are basically the next generation Ted and Booster. Why not put them on this team together? Why not channel that?
Absolutely. No, I think that's so great. Impulse needs a best friend. Impulse is always looking for friends. And they are such an optimistic, kind person. I think that they would match each other's energies very well.
Yeah.
I also like that these are heroes that have origins from outside of the coastal area of the DC Comics universe. He's from fake Miami, and
he's from El Paso.
Yeah, El Paso, sorry. The movie, he's from fake Miami.
Yeah.
And Impulse is from Alabama, the irony being like Southern living is slow and he's really fast.
Right.
So we get representation from places in the United States that don't often end up on superhero teams. I like that too. Thinking, and we might have to fudge some stuff continuity-wise to make this fit in. We're trying to keep gender parity somewhere equal, but also this character has gender fuckery in a way that I like. Sir Justina, the Shining Knight.
We could do that.
The Shining Knight from Seven Soldiers of Justice, right?
Don't worry, Shining Knight is still around.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we could definitely use Justina. Very interesting as like a figure of like maybe the adult in the room who has been around the longest.
Yeah, she's got experience, or I'm not sure what gender pronouns this character uses.
Let's go with they.
Let's say they. My interpretation of them is that they are trans mass non-binary, right?
Yeah.
Where they don't mind being feminine, and they understand that they have a feminine body, but where they grew up in the Knights of the Round Table, being a knight and a squire was a job for a man, and that was something that they were incredibly happy to take upon themselves. Masculinity is not something that it feels unnatural to her. It's a part of her, or a part of them. But also they operate as like a heavy. They are just pure fight brutality. They got a big sword. They got a magic horse. And two, they have formal training in combat from literally King Arthur in the Knights of the Round Table. They have seen the end of the world in some way, and they are now just drawn to the duty of doing good like the Knights of the Round Table would do.
I am seeing a story considering Greta's own tragedy with her brother in the past, where Justina recognizes her and takes her on sort of as their squire, and becomes that mentor figure to her that she needs.
Why don't they give us all just be in charge of the DC universe? They should just let us do it.
I'm gonna activate my final card here.
Okay.
This is the drop that I'm really excited about. I'm so glad we have a space for this character on the team, because this is my final choice. Because it's a character I have wanted to see interact with Jaime forever, and I think would be a great place on this team. My all-time favorite cosmic character. I'm dropping Jessica Cruz, the Green Lantern.
Yo, talk about Jessica Cruz all the time. So I'm very happy for this.
Yeah. Jessica Cruz is a character whose whole deal is that being a Green Lantern is not about the absence of fear. It's about overcoming fear. And she is anxious about literally everything all of the time, but still gets out and does the goddamn thing. She is the only true millennial DC superhero, and I love her.
So real. She's adulting.
Yeah. And like,
I'm sorry for using that word. I hate it.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
She is from the generation that would use that word. This is a great team.
This is honestly a great team. I can already imagine the kinds of stories that they would tell with each other, right? Like, I feel like we've matched up personality and like emotional challenges and background challenges. I never would have thought the thing about Greta becoming a squire to Shining Knight, but it makes sense. She developed a crush on Robin because Robin is who she wants to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like, there's this whole ancient rivalry between the Green Lanterns and the Reach, which creates the Scarabs.
Yes.
So there's this kind of animosity built in but because Jessica's ring and Jaime's Scarab have been so humanized by their respective partners, I think there's an interesting dynamic you could explore there. Like, maybe
like
we
a
get
very like Lord of the Rings, I never thought you'd be fighting alongside an elf, the kind of moment. Yeah.
I'm thinking that our main romance is a bug that falls in love with a ring.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's such a good idea, though. That's an incredible idea.
And like, Jaime and Jessica are just like brought along on these awkward dates.
Yeah. And they're just sort of like, well, I mean, what you watching on TV?
Well, our dogs like each other.
Exactly. And I also can see Justina and Connor like being co-leads.
Oh,
like,
yes, absolutely.
They come to the table with strategy, and Connor's role ends up being talking Justina down from brutal violence.
Yeah.
Like, most of the time, because he's seen with his own father what that does to a person.
Yeah, as a very spiritual person, she'll like see him as like, I think, a kind of Merlin figure.
Yeah. I think she's going to approach this whole team as like, this is her take. This is her chance to redo what she always wanted, which was to be a Knight of the Round Table.
Yeah, this is their round table.
This is their round table. Yeah, let's stick with they, them. Yeah. I think they don't even understand what gender identity is, but they don't like her. And he also was him was a lie that they were telling to for a very long time. So I think they'll be like, okay, you use they, whatever.
Yeah, we've just developed DC's Excalibur, and I'm all about it.
Yeah, basically, yes. Absolutely, yes. I think Secret is DC and all comics for a long time have lamented that they're losing young readers. They are retaining older readers, but they don't know how to make books for younger readers. You just need to have younger characters going through teenager type stuff. Greta was such a good example of that in Young Justice, especially like her little childlike crush on Robin and the way that she has a lot of moods and she's angsty and she's been through something that's really unfair to her, but she still has the naivety of youth. And there just is a dearth of those characters in all comic books as when you go outside of the X-Men. That's basically they only exist in the X-Men.
DC, if you want to make this, Gita and I are available as co-writers. Otherwise, TM.
Yeah.
If you are
original idea, do not steal.
Yeah. Otherwise, if you're a listener and you have like art skills, I would love to see this lineup. I'm calling it. God, please. I have a name.
Yes, please.
Like I propose in the Final Fantasy tradition, Knights of the Round.
Just say the same thing. Say the same exact thing. Yes, they're the Knights of the Round. Connor would love that. Greta would love that. Impulse wouldn't know what it was a reference to, but would pretend to.
Yeah. Yeah. Jessica Cruz is a canonical gamer. She would be all about it. Jaime is also a gamer. So I think we sold it.
I think probably Jaime and Jessica pitched that as the name simultaneously.
Yes.
And Justina is like, of course, obviously we're calling ourselves that. Yeah. Like, no idea. And then they're like, wait, have you played Final Fantasy? And it's like, well, I've been a part of a Final Fantasy of the kingdom of King Arthur.
Yes. Fantasy endures forever. Final Fantasy. Perish the thought. I think that was such a good question. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you so much. We just came up with such a good idea, and I'm going to be sad every day we don't get to make it real.
All right. I think I'm going to end this with one more question for you. Gita, do you think after all this time, we're 26 issues into this 52-issue series. So I got to ask you, by now, surely, are you ready?
Honestly, I could use another 15 minutes. I really need to make myself a matcha. I'll see you in like 15 minutes. Honestly, It might be more closer to 5.
Yeah,
so don't worry about it.
It's okay. I got some toilet stuff to take care of.
Pickup is an Aftermath production created by Gita Jackson and Alex Jaffe and edited by Esper Quim with original music by John Ahrens. The views and opinions expressed on this show are solely those of the show's personalities and do not reflect those of DC Entertainment or Warner Brothers. Please rate and review our show wherever you can and send your questions and comments to 52mailbag@gmail.com. Never stop reading comics.